Hello and welcome to the Analyst by Vajiram and Ravi, your daily guide to decoding current affairs the smart way for UPSC examination. It's September 21st, 2025 and today's edition features two important deep dive articles for Mains 2026. Firstly, we'll be looking into the various instances of President rule in India, tracking its constitutional provisions, political trends and landmark case. In the next one, we'll be looking into India's maritime sector, exploring its economic potential, strategic importance and upcoming policy reforms. In our Prelims 2026 simplified section, we will be covering key updates on the Mumbai-Ahmedabad bullet train project, ongoing H-1B visa reforms in the US, the growing scope of sustainable aviation fuel, the seasonal challenge of stubble burning in India and the prestigious National Film Awards. So let's begin. Hi guys, welcome back. I hope you all are doing well. I hope your preparation is going fine. So with this, let us start with today's very first article, which is on the President's rule in India. Now you know that this is actually a very significant provision of our Indian Constitution, and that is why it is extremely important for our GS2. And here we will be trying to understand the various basics, right? And also there is deep, detailed and structured analysis of the President rule in the country, and obviously about some important historical background, some data from this article also, which will be helping you to write better answers in mains, right? So let us begin with the very first basic thing about President's rule. You know that in the Indian Constitution, when it was envisaged and talked about, debated in the Constituent Assembly, several of the constitution makers had some apprehensions about the constitution and the emergency provisions they would put in this part of the constitution from around article 352 to article 360, which is consisting of national, state and financial emergencies. And there were actually various need of the time to have a proper amount of political structure across the country, and obviously for emergency, for various other provisions which would be unforeseen circumstances. That is why the emergency provisions were brought in. In this article, we'll be looking only at President's rule. We'll be not looking at the financial emergency or the national emergency, because due to the paucity of time, we have to limit ourselves to this discussion only. Now, President's rule is nowhere written in the constitution of our country, okay? According to article 356, we have the provision to impose various strict conditions on a particular state. We also know that by the name of state emergency, constitutional emergency, and this directly tells us that the provisions under the article 356 empowers the center to directly rule in a state when the state government has failed to function according to the basic constitutional norms, law and order situations and various other provisions. Also, here you have to understand that there are two primary grounds for the imposition of the emergency provisions in our country, in any state. Firstly, we have to understand that article 355 states that it is a duty of the center to protect the states against any external aggression. That is understood. Maybe it can be an act of war. Also, against internal disturbances too. For example, in Jammu and Kashmir, there were many instances of President's rule being imposed because of the militancy, right? And obviously, if the constitution is not being followed in that state government, that is also one of the reasons for the imposition. Article 356 directly instructs that the President will be assuming the state administration, right? And the union will be actually be controlling the executive functions, and the parliament of our country will be running the legislative business of that particular state. Correct? Article 357 is obviously important. It is telling that the exercise of the legislative powers under proclamation issued under article 356 is actually with the central government, that is obviously with the parliament of our country. And here we have to understand that if the center is taking over, there would be the governor who will be running the state on the behalf of the president, right? And here the state assembly may be dissolved, it can be dissolved at all, or it can be kept under suspended animation. And this means that, for the time being, the council minister, the chief minister and the various other ministers, they are ineffective, right? And this is obviously just to bring stability in that particular state. Because always remember guys that this emergency provisions across these articles in this part of the constitution is actually a kind of a temporary provision where we have to control the various nuances of the governance and we have to get back to normalcy as soon as possible. That was actually the idea of the fathers of our constitution, especially Dr. Ambedkar, right, who actually thought that the emergency provisions would be actually be remaining a dead letter. That means that we would not be using this provision so many times. But we'll be looking at the facts very soon. Also, Article 365 needs our importance because this can direct the various states government to follow the center's directive, right? And if any case the state governments are not listening to the center's directive, it can also be another ground for imposition of president's rule. And here, there was a very famous case known as S.R. Bommai case of 1994. We'll be discussing the various provisions later on, but that particular Supreme Court case actually have given us right now various proper use of president's rule powers and some improper use. You can pause the screen right now and you can actually look at the various powers, right? For example, say, in the prelims examination or also in the mains examination, they can ask you what are the following instances of proper use of president's rule. So, for example, see, if there is a hung assembly means that after election there is no proper majority, right? Everyone is taking coalition government and it is so unstable that government cannot be formed. Also, majority parties sometimes can decline to form the government in very rare cases. Next, sometimes the governor cannot find some coalition government. Article 365, remember guys that I told that the central government sometimes sends various orders and instructions to the state governments. And if at all the state governments are not deliberately following them, that can be another ground. There can be also internal subversion where the state government deliberately acts against the law or the constitution, that is known as the failure of constitutional machinery. Next, there can be also physical breakdown. For example, the government is willingly not following the duties and providing for the governance in the states due to high corruption, even due to high amount of illegal activities, and also due to various war, epidemic, natural disasters. That can also be one of the cases. But these are all the proper cases. Now guys, let us look at some of the improper use also. Sometimes the governor can recommend the imposition of president's rule without even looking into the possibility of forming alternative government. It can be in cases of some political reasons. Also, sometimes the emergency can be recommended by the governor without even conducting a floor test, right? Sometimes it has been seen during the 70s and 80s decades that a ruling party is dismissing the other political parties in power in some other states. And in 1980s, we will be seeing also that how the Congress government, when it came to power, it also tried to take a reverse revenge. Right? So these are the improper cases. Alongside the same, it can be also be declared with reference to the maladministration or allegations of corruption or stringent financial exigencies of the state. Now, these are not proper grounds. These are not proven or we do not have proper evidence. But after that, if we impose emergency, that is an improper use. Right? Because you have to understand guys, president rule is subsuming all the executive and the legislative power of the state government and is denoting all of them to the central government, right? Also, sometimes the state government are not given prior warning. Power is used to sort out intra-party problems of the ruling party or for any purpose which is irrelevant to the constitutional provisions, mainly for the political reasons, right? So this is why we have to keep in mind the proper imposition of president's rule, right? The procedure and everything must be followed with utmost precision. Now we have to understand a president's rule in any state can only be imposed if it is recommended by the governor with reference to the failure of the constitutional machinery. The governor will be in a report which is not given to the public, will be sending to the president that okay, this particular XYZ state is not being run according to the laws and the norms of the land, right? And after that, we have to understand that the powers of the executive and the legislature will be going to the central government. How? There must be a parliamentary approval of this particular motion, right? And here we have to understand that this must be approved within 2 months with a simple majority, guys, not special majority. Now, there is a particular thing that you have to keep in mind, that if an emergency initiative has been undertaken and, in the meantime, the Lok Sabha is dissolved, right? What will happen then to the motion here? It will be needed, for example, say if a new Lok Sabha is coming into power, you have to pass the same, the new Lok Sabha has to pass the same within 30 days. But in the meantime, the Rajya Sabha must be approving to the same also. Guys, next we have to discuss about the duration which is given in the 44th Constitutional Amendment Act of 1978, which is telling that we have a time limit of around 6 months, extendable every 6 months onwards up to a maximum of 3 years. But we have to keep in mind that any extensions beyond 1 year will be requiring the fulfillment of two conditions. Firstly, we have to have a national emergency, right, in the entire country, which is a very difficult thing. And obviously, we need a certificate from the Election Commission of India that in that state, elections cannot be held in a democratic way maybe, or due to various international issues, or due to various other kind of concerns. So that is why the Election Commission of India must be giving a certificate, and in those cases only it can be extended beyond that time. And when it comes to termination of the president's rule, it is the most simple. It can only be declared by the president, and here we do not need any parliamentary approval for the same. If the president of India deems fit that it does not need any kind of president's rule anymore, it can be discontinued from that time onwards. Now, when we have to understand this particular topic in greater detail, we have to actually understand the history and the various instances of misuse of this particular president's rule. Firstly, when we talk about the very early India, from around 1950s to 60s, Article 356 were actually used very frequently in politically turbulent states. And if we can actually understand, from 1950s till present time, we have had so far 135 instances of president's rule. And what we have understood curiously from this article also today, we have understood that after president's rule, the party in power were changed when the fresh elections were held, because mainly of negative public perception and the so many issues politically. So that is why the political party generally changes after the imposition of emergency. This has been the data which we are talking about, and the percentage is around 64.4%. that is around 2/3 of the time the government has changed, right? And this is around 87 times. That means that if you use too frequently, it can actually lead to the changing of the political outcomes. Also, the 70s saw the Janata Party dismissing many Congress governments, around 10 plus in so many states. What happened? When the Congress came back to in power in 1980s, Indira Gandhi government in return, right, overturned the more than 8 Janata Party governments in various states. So many experts tell that it was actually revenge dismissal. And obviously, it's the 70s and the 80s decades actually saw a lot of changes to the constitution of our country too. In the comments, you let me know the summary of the changes also. Now, again, when we talk about the instance of 1992 Babri Masjid demolition, emergency was again imposed in UP, Rajasthan, Madhya Pradesh, Himachal Pradesh due to law and order grounds. After that, even the BJP suffered some political defeats in various states. Now came the most important case, that is the SR Bommai case of 1994. We'll be talking about the provisions, but mainly after the Supreme Court case here, which actually gave various strict conditions on president's rule, we right now in the recent decades are seeing a drop in the use of president's rule. Except for various insurgencies or breakdowns in Punjab, Jammu and Kashmir and Manipur respectively, right? So that is why this article is arguing right now that right now it has become a rarer constitutional institution which our Dr. B.R. Ambedkar earlier hoped that it would remain a dead letter, right? And due to all these instances of president's rule, we have generally seen how the party in power changes. We also have understood that how it causes various governance paralysis, because if the state government is dismissed, the state government is actually composed of representatives chosen by the state people only during the elections, and if they are being dismissed, the regular day-to-day functioning of the state government will not be functioning well. Also, there is actually a very huge amount of ambiguity into knowing what exactly do you mean by constitutional breakdown. There is no proper definition of that. It can be open to subjective interpretation by the central government according to their whims and fancies. Various experts tell this. And obviously, there is always a chance of misuse by the state governor, because the governor of any state government, while it is recommending in his or her report President's rule imposition in any state, he or she is not bound to release the report in the public. No one knows what is in the report actually. It can be a blank statement also sometimes, right? It can be that the center is instructing the governor to draft these kind of reasons which sometimes, cannot be following the constitutional provisions too. So that is why this 1994 SR Bommai case is extremely important. Firstly, the judicial review, which was actually been introduced via the 44th Constitutional Amendment Act, was actually upheld. That the Supreme Court told that this kind of emergency provisions are not immune to judicial scrutiny. It is actually subjected to judicial review, and courts can actually look at all the material basis, the evidence of the proclamation, even the process of the same. Okay, obviously the SR Bommai case told that the floor test is mandatory. You must be doing a majority test at the house of the assembly, state assembly, right? And if you are not doing this, you are not respecting the democratic principles of free and fair elections too, and the outcome of the free and fair elections, right? And it rejected the governor's subjective reports. Also, in a major instance, Supreme Court also told that the state governments can be dismissed if that particular state government is following anti-secular principles. Because the Supreme Court observed that secularism is a basic structure of our constitution. Next, it also imposed various limits on the central power. The central government cannot misuse these article to dismiss the state governments arbitrarily. That is why you have to go back again to the point 1, that you need to have material basis and evidence for the same. Obviously, the parliamentary approval must be done by both houses of the parliament, guys. We have to keep in mind, okay, within 2 months. And lastly, restoration of the state government is also possible if the entire proclamation was unconstitutional, if this entire proclamation did not follow any rules and regulations, right? And now, when we look at the data here, we have the various state governments such as Manipur, which has seen around 11 kind of imposition of President's rule. And this is also seeing the latest ongoing President's rule. It was imposed in February 2025, and it is still being extended to February 2026. Follows the same by Uttar Pradesh, Punjab and Jammu and Kashmir, and various other states such as Gujarat, Bihar, Kerala, Karnataka, Puducherry, right, who also have had seen various other changes after the President's rule according to their kind of political powers, right? So this is where we have to understand that there have been so many states which have suffered the blow of President's rule over a period of time, correct? And that is why we need to take some reforms right now. There have been so many committees, right? And if you write the names of the committees in your answers, it will obviously add various values, right? You can get that 1 extra mark. Firstly, according to Sarkaria Commission recommendation, it told that we should only be using President's rule as a last resort only, not regularly. And obviously, apart from using President's rule, we should also suggest various alternate course of action. It cannot be the same that President's rule is the only solution. There are various other solutions also. Consultation with the states, right, talking them into confidence and various other things. Obviously, it also recommended that a governor's report must be made in public. It must be a speaking document, not a confidential document, right? Because the governor needs to be very clear what it has stated in the report when it is recommending the President's rule. The Pucci Commission recommended a very good thing, that we must be trying to localize the provision in some districts or various collection of districts, not the entire state, right? Because the entire state should not be under this kind of President's rule, because the governance will be impacted. And it should not be more than 3 months, the entire amount of duration, because 3 months is enough time to get back and solve the various issues within the state, if at all we are not having a constitutional machinery in that particular state government. Next, the Interstate Council, which is actually a constitutional body under Article 263, it also gives some recommendations that proclamation must be ratified within 1 month. 2 months is actually too bigger period for this kind of proclamations. And also we need a special majority instead of simple majority. Okay. Next, the NCRWC, which has recommended so many recommendations for our constitution, it has also advised that we should be using this very sparingly, right? We should also not be dismissing the state legislative assembly before the proclamation is approved by the parliament, which is right now the case. And apart from that, we have also so many other instances also, such as that we should be fixing the governor's rule legally and procedurally. We should be having proper timelines and deadlines and proper amount of float test windows according to a law or act of the parliament. We should have a deadline for the float test. Next, we need to strengthen the anti-defection law. Right? We have to actually try to understand sometimes the members of the parliament can be influenced by defecting to other political parties. We have to keep that into mind also. And obviously we need in-party discipline laws. That within the party itself, we should be having proper discipline laws, and it can also be overseen by the Election Commission of India during mostly the elections. Next, we also need a parliamentary committee on proclamations, which can make non-binding recommendation, but those recommendations can be made public so that we can actually know that how this kind of proclamations are being approved or rejected, or what is the wording and phrasing in those recommendations. Next, we should also try to have some early warning and conflict resolution between the various state governments and the center, so that they can actually try to mend their ways, go into constitutional framework. And obviously we need a speedy judicial review. If at all some state government has approached the Supreme Court to resolve this kind of disputes, we should have a proper speedy judicial review, because the longer this kind of issues drag on, the people of the state will be suffering more. So these are all the things that we need to keep in mind. Please resolve these prelims PYQs according to the things that we have just discussed right now, and a mains practice question for all of you for writing the same in the comments below. So let us move on to the next one. Guys, in this article we are looking into the Indian maritime sector because we have some recent statements by our Prime Minister at some inauguration of the projects in Gujarat, which is amounting to 34,200 crores in India's maritime sector. That is why we will be looking into the various instances of how the current shipping sector in the country is, what are the various issues, challenges, and mostly we'll be focusing on the government initiatives. Highly important for your mains answer writing, guys. Now, our Prime Minister is giving some statements lately that we should be adopting Swadeshi products. We should be reducing the dependency on other countries, because any kind of dependency in our lives also, we understand that we should not be dependent on others. And if we do that, we will not be doing the things on our own accord. We will always need some motivation from others, right? And that is why our Prime Minister has told that dependence on various other countries are actually our biggest enemy, and we should be fighting the same. You all understand this is actually in the backdrop of the US trade policies and the recent visa restrictions also, which we are going to actually discuss in the later ones. But in this one, we are mainly focusing on GS3 infrastructure with reference to ports. And shipping sector has actually been in the news for the past few months, because the government of India has come up with a very interesting tagline known as Samudra Se Samriddhi. That means that we need to achieve prosperity from the oceans. And we actually understand that India is situated on a very strategic location in the Indian Ocean region. And that is why we have a lot to gain from the long coastline, from immense amount of shipping infrastructure, and the boosting of economic services in the coming years. So that is why, just have a look at the recent maritime mega projects which has been inaugurated by our Prime Minister. Now, this is the broader scheme to boost the shipping sector of our country. Firstly, we have an international cruise terminal right now at Mumbai at Indira Dock. We also will be having container terminal and various facilities at Kolkata, that is under the Shyama Prasad Mukherjee port. We also have container berth and cargo handling facilities at Odisha. Next, at Kandla, we are having a major multi-cargo terminal. Then we are doing the same at Ennore via modern roads, firefighting, coastal protection at Chennai port and Nicobar Islands even, right? And we also are focusing on developing, the multi-purpose cargo berth and green biomethanol plant to actually boost on the sustainable part too. And at the end of the day, we are also having ship repair facilities at Patna and even Varanasi. You have to understand, guys, that Patna and Varanasi is actually located inland. So this is actually also hinting that we are focusing on inland waterways too. So when we are talking about the maritime sector and the shipping sector and the port sector, we have to combine even the inland rivers and the waterways, right? Now, our Prime Minister actually gave us many important data also while he was speaking. So you can actually directly use this in your answers. Firstly, he told that the shipping sector is actually gateway for India to world trade, because more than 90% of the entire trade that we do with the entire world is carried by the ship. Right? Next, the ships themselves carry 70% of the value. That means the economic value of the products. Right? Also, while he was actually giving this speech, he told that when India became independent, the Indian made ships dominated the entire world. That is 40% of the ships internationally were actually Indian made. Right now the number has gone down to 5%. Next, he also told that foreign freight paid with reference to the dependence on various other countries for using their ships, their services, their repair and maintenance portals and terminals. We are paying how much? $75 billion per year. That means this is around 6 lakh crore according to our Prime Minister. This is even matching the defense budget and sometimes even more. Right? That means this is the amount of money we are spending on making the other countries richer, which we earlier used to do ourselves. Also, when we talk about the seafarer population, which is actually the number of people who are working in this particular sector, it was in 2014 around 1.25 lakh. It has increased to more than 3 lakh, and we are right now within the top 3 countries globally when we talk about the workforce in this particular sector. Right? Also, the time taken for a ship to come to a dock, to unload the goods, to load the new goods, and then again go back to its destination, it takes around less than 24 hours right now. In 2014, right, or before that, it used to take around 4 days. So that means that we have reduced this port turnaround time also. Also, when we talk about the port capacity, with reference to the last 10-15 years, we have doubled, right, in 11 years. Also, if you can see here, the cargo is increasing over a period of time. So via this historical critic, our Prime Minister is showcasing how India has been going forward. And how India has been going forward? It is specifically via so many policies we are going to look over the next few slides. Firstly, we have to understand that 2025 has been a very big boost to the entire shipping sector. Firstly, we had this Coastal Shipping Act, Carriage of Goods by Sea Bill, and Merchant Shipping Act, and also the Indian Ports Bill 2025. All of this were discussed in the previous analyst sessions, and even in the last month I discussed in detail regarding Indian Ports Bill 2025. Right? I am going to briefly discuss all of this. Firstly, the Coastal Shipping Act is trying to boost the domestic trade, coastal trade by having a national transport mode. It is trying to simplify permits for interstate cargo movement also, and it is also trying to give the various relaxations for Indian made ships with some costs and charges. The Carriage of Goods by Sea is trying to focus on the various aspects of container infrastructure. We have so many containers, right, which we try to carry to the various other parts of the world, and also we try to bring them back in terms of various import and export services, right? Right now, we're aligning with Hague, Visby and Rotterdam rules with reference to container and carriage of goods by the sea provisions. So we are actually looking at the international regulation too. Correct? And we will be also having digital bills and various liabilities, and all of these things have been delineated so that least amount of legal disputes come up. Next, we have the Merchant Shipping Act, which is trying to enhance the safety of the crew, the members, even looking at pollution control, right? It is looking at electronic certification, e-navigation. So in brief, this is all these acts are trying to do. Also, the Indian Ports Bill is trying to modernize the various major and the minor ports in the country. We have around 13 major ports in the country, as you can see in the map here, and all of these ports are very important, guys. There I will be showing you a PYQ which actually asks you about the various ports in the news. Also, we can understand that over a period of time, to boost the businesses and the various other aspects of the major and the minor ports, we are trying to boost around $82 billion of investment by 2035 for port infrastructure, right? And if we talk about Paradip port, which is actually India's largest port, it is handling around 145 million tons of cargo in 2024, right? Also, we are trying to expand our ships by 2047 by 1,000 ships, correct? We also are doing sustainability focus. We are trying to build the ships in our country itself. For that we have invested around 10,500 crore. So we are doing so many aspects. Especially we are also moving away from not only the non-major ports, we are also moving towards the infrastructure development of the major ports, and also towards a new category known as the mega ports, right? So these are actually the mega ports which will be very important and crucial for our shipping sector. Now this is the two PYQs which I am talking about. Please do read the questions and let me know what is the answer in the comments below. And here we have to also look at briefly the Port Bill 2025, which is actually trying to modernize the 1908 Colonial Act of the same name, right? Right now, let me just revise you. We have actually discussed this before also. Just for the revision sake, we will be setting up new statutory bodies under this act. Earlier, we had none. For example, we will be setting up the Maritime State Development Council, where the state governments and the central government will be all together, sitting together to discuss about the maritime sector. We also have the state level bodies known as the state maritime bodies, and obviously the dispute resolution councils to settle out the disputes. We also will be enhancing the powers of the port management authorities by giving them various adjudicating powers with reference to some penalties, with reference to tariffs. For the major ports, Board of Port Authority will be registering the tariff. For the non-major port, the state maritime boards will be looking after the same. With reference to various obligation and pollution norms, we are right now following the MARPOL principles, and also we'll be looking into how the various ballast water and the various wastes are discharged into the seas. Apart from this, 2025 have been the turning point. Now, apart from this, there have been various other key initiatives too. For example, we are trying to invest $82 billion. Remember guys, that was actually under the Sagar Mala program, where we are trying to modernize all the ports, enhance a proper port strategy. Next, we also have the National Logistics Policy. We are not only focusing on ports here, but also on the airports, on the roads, on the various railroads, and so on. So that we have a unified logistics platform to actually transport goods and services much more quicker. Next, we also have digitization within the port system. Firstly, we have the One Nation, One Port Access, even One Nation, One Document within this particular initiative. That means that there should be a digital portal for the businesses, for the private sector, so that they can go there and file and register their cargo, container, so that they have ease of doing business. Next, we also have a blockchain platform at the Jawaharlal Nehru Port Trust, which is looking into the various organizational records and digitization and so on. Next, we also are doing so many amounts of ease of doing business reform separately. We have introduced 100% automatic route FDI in shipbuilding and shipping sector to attract more amount of investments. We are also carrying out the private-public partnership model with reference to shipbuilding sector. We are also recently have inaugurated India's first transshipment hub, where the main difference between transshipment and direct shipping is that there is an intermediary port in between which will be handling the cargoes and loading to various other vessels, so that the initial kind of the ships, they can seamlessly carry on their shipping activities, right? Next, we have various other key initiatives such as promoting the national waterways that we have discussed previously. Also in recent times, we have introduced the Jal Marg Vikas project, which is modernizing the waterway 1, which is actually on the Ganga river, right? Apart from this, we have so many other national waterways, and if we compare the same with various other countries such as Netherlands, even with Bangladesh, they have actually good amount of inland waterways. Next, when we talk about sustainability in the port sector, we are taking so many initiatives to promote green initiatives, such as we have Green Port Guidelines, which is known as Harit Sagar Guidelines, which is actually looking at the transformation of the ports towards a more sustainable approach. Next, we have the Green Tug Transition Program, in which we are trying to transform the tugs, which are actually small vessels which try to transport the very big vessels using various tugs, right? So these are the small vessels which we are trying to boost the same using renewable energy. Next, we are also launching green hydrogen hubs at Paradip, Kandla and Tuticorin ports. Next, we are also signing various agreements with countries such as Singapore with reference to green and digital corridor. That means from India, right? From India to Singapore, right? To Singapore here. This particular maritime sea route will be totally free of any pollution. They have agreed between themselves, and that can be possible if you are using sustainable fuels between India and Singapore, if you are following the proper waste management procedures and everything. And at the end of the day, India is also on board with International Maritime Organization's 2050 net zero goals. That means that the new emissions from the shipping sector must be reaching zero by 2050. That means we should not be polluting more. But the thing is that, guys, we have some challenges too. Firstly, we do not have proper developed inland waterways. Out of the total, 14,500 kilometers navigable coastal, features in our country, only 3.5% of the same is having trade movement. That is, we are heavily underutilizing the same. Next, we are actually dependent on transshipment, right? That means 75% of India's cargo has been transshipped as foreign ports, and due to which we are paying so much amount of foreign exchange prices, right? Next, with reference to infrastructure, we are not having proper amount of deep drafts, modern equipments. When we talk about maritime security, we have China and her string of pearls policy, which is trying to encircle India on the maritime borders. We are also having delay in the Project 75I, which is a kind of a setback for India with reference to the naval defense projects. Next, with reference to the regulatory roles and the regulations, in the recent Indian port bill, we also had seen earlier how the center can have more centralization powers via the MSDC. Correct. Next, when we talk about the environmental aspects, there are heavy costs involved because according to various reports, if we are trying to do a green transition from fossil fuel dependent ports sector right now, it will take around 87 to 100 million per year by 2030. Also, we have a shipping fleet, or the various number of ships that we have are quite old, to the tune of around 20 years, right? And also, if we talk about our own India's stand and rank in the global shipping sector, that is less than even 1%. Next, when we talk about the skill and the gender gap, we have only less than 2% as women seafarers, and we do not have proper AI or Internet of Things manpower. That is where we need to focus on the way forward right now. Firstly, we have to strengthen the multimodal connectivity. That is, we can have a dedicated freight corridor which is actually under development, where we can try to link the railways, the roadways and the other kind of infrastructure sector, right? Next, when we talk about the smart port infrastructure, we have to focus on AI investments, Internet of Things investments, because this can actually make the things automated, and also we can maintain it properly. Next, with reference to skill development, we need to set up more centers of excellence, more training institutes. We should be giving more scholars, more skill courses in AI and blockchain in the shipping sector. We have to invest in green technology. For that, we can give a PLI scheme, production linked incentive scheme, properly dedicated to boosting renewable energy in the shipping sector, because it is involving a lot of costs. Also, in the last analyst session, I talked about viability gap funding. So we also need the same under this particular sector. Next, we need renewable power cranes, electric cargo, which requires a lot of investments. We have to do that. When we talk about disaster resilience, we have to have a climate resilient port design so that we are immune to this increasing amount of cyclones and earthquakes. Next, we need automated customs clearance too, because this documentation and all those proper amount of legal requirements actually delay a lot of time at the ports. So we can automate it, and this initiative of one nation, one port, one document is actually very important. And at the end of the day, we have to ensure regional cooperation, because Indian Ocean is not only our own. We have actually shared this particular region with various other island nations, with our neighbors. We have to boost the same under BIMSTEC, under Indian Ocean Ream Organization. We have to also collaborate with like-minded Western countries, right, with reference to Quad initiatives and various other things. And that is why we have to achieve this Maritime Vision 2030. We have the various targets here which can be extremely useful for you to write this mains answer. Now we'll be moving on to the simplified section. Guys, our railway minister gave us a very good news regarding the Mumbai Ahmedabad bullet train project, where recently a tunnel has been properly excavated so that the bullet train can have a faster amount of completion of the targets. So this is very important when we talk about general science, because here we are talking about bullet trains and the science behind it, and obviously about the infrastructure section. Firstly, when we talk about the working of the bullet train and the basic principle behind it, the bullet trains have a very aerodynamic design. We know that it is traveling at very fast speeds, and if you travel at extremely fast speed, right, you will create a lot of air resistance. So to smoothen out that air resistance, the design is in this manner, in the shape of a kingfisher's beak, so that it reduces the friction, which is also sometimes known by the term of sonic boom in cases of very high speed trains. And that is why the designs of the present trains are very different from the bullet trains, right? Now, for this extremely high amount of speed, we are not using fossil fuels and all those other propellants and petrol, diesels, right? We are using magnets, right? We are using electricity and magnets, where these magnets are positioned in the tracks, and these magnets are actually helping the train to float on the guideway, which is actually very, very interesting, right? And here we are alternatively trying to change the poles of the magnets to help propel the train forward, for which we have dedicated tracks. These tracks are smooth throughout, right? They do not have any gaps in between, and that is why it is actually extremely costly to build also this kind of bullet trains, right? This kind of projects can take more than 1 lakh crore of investments, right? And when we talk about the technology involved, every single coach in this bullet train is having their own independently capable units with reference to wheels, with reference to any kind of engines. Every coach is having their own kind of multiple units, which is totally independent, right? But controlled by a centralized aspect, right? And obviously it uses distributed power in all these electric multiple units. In all the separate wagons, we are using distributed power. That means power is distributed across the train and not only in the main engine room, right? Obviously, when we talk about the infrastructure of the construction, the curves need to have a very wide radius because it is traveling at extremely high speed, and you know that by the principle of centrifugal and centripetal forces, we need to have the same, right? And also we need sloping conditions so that the train can actually take a bend on gentle slopes. Heavy fencing is required due to preventing animals and humans crossing, and we need proper bridges and tunnels. And let me tell you guys, India's project here of bullet train will be including a 7-kilometer undersea tunnel at Thane Creek and long viaducts to avoid level crossings, correct? And this is actually a very huge form of an infrastructural marvel. Now, in this kind of trains, the braking system is very interesting. When the bullet train is actually gliding through and you need to apply the brakes to slow it down, the brakes are connected to the electrical grid, and the friction that is caused between the kind of wheels, it will be generating some heat energy. That energy will be feed into the electrical grid, and you can actually get this kind of energy from the brakes also, which can even fuel the train forward, right? And that is why the disc brakes and the eddy current brakes and the technology behind it are extremely important in this kind of trains. And when we talk about the Indian project here, the total length will be around 508 kilometers, which will be having viaducts like this, bridges, various amount of covers, tunnels, mountain tunnels, right? And various amount of structures will be there. And the maximum speed that we try to achieve will be around 320 kilometer per hour, which is actually very, very fast. And it will be reducing the time to around 2 hours, which earlier used to take around 5-6 hours. That is the time between Gujarat and Mumbai, correct? And this is how we have to understand that as of now, this tunnel which is in the news right now is of around 4.88 kilometers long, and this is trying to cut down the travel time to 2 hours around, and currently it is around 9 hours, pardon me, right? And the implementing agency is National High Speed Railway Corporation Limited. These are all the information that you need to know for prelims, which are actually factual. The train series that we are going to use is from Japanese technology, which is the Japanese Shinkansen E5 series, okay? And the estimated cost is around 1.08 lakh crore. So recently this tunnel beneath Mumbai Thane Creek has actually been constructed, right? And this excavation has been done. So this will be reducing the travel time, and the frequency of the bullet train will be around 30 minutes during peak hours. Initially it will be reduced to 20 minutes. So you can imagine every 2 hours you can reach from Gujarat, that is Ahmedabad, to Mumbai, which is actually cutting down the time almost by 7 hours, which is very significant. So let us now move on to the next one. Guys, Mr. Trump has hiked the H-1B visa fees to $100,000, and this has created ripples of protest, of rage across the entire world. Let us understand why. Firstly, understand that it is important for prelims because this kind of visa and the references can be asked in the prelims. Okay, because current events of international importance are given in the syllabus. Next, for GST perspective, we need to look into how this policy is affecting the Indian diaspora. Firstly, look at the most common types of US visa, guys. This is an old data, but we need to only look at the category of the visa. With reference to US visa, we have two kinds of the same. First, we have non-immigrant visa and we have immigrant visas. We are mainly focused on the non-immigrant part. Firstly, if you are a tourist who is going to the US, you should be taking a B1 or B2 visa. And this is having the maximum number of issuance, obviously. But if you are a student, you have to take F1 or M1 visa. If you are a private sector cultural exchange person, you have to take the J1. And most importantly, you have to take one H1B visa if you are someone who is highly skilled, or you are going to or looking to work in the US after the completion of your studies, such as master's or PhD in the US, right? So H1B is actually a temporary work visa for only special occupations, and the annual cap which earlier used to exist was around 85,000 visa. So earlier it used to be designated via lottery system. Right now, gradually what the Trump administration was doing before yesterday was they were prioritizing higher salaries and higher skilled people, and they were only letting them in the US via this particular visa. Now, H1 visa is extremely important. It is not only a document, right, guys? It is actually the ticket for you to stay and work in the US and live a better life. For the US also, it is extremely important for their economy, because it is giving them the access to tech and STEM, that is science, technology, engineering, management talents all across the world, mainly from India. We have so many brilliant guys who are going from India to the US to work, right? Obviously, if those brilliant guys are going and working there, US economy will be better, right? They will be going higher in technology, which they are going right now. They are having technology supremacy due to our own talent. Next, they take this kind of people, under this visa to bridge the various skill shortages. And obviously, it is a part of the American dream for the entire world to settle in the US, right? Now, what Trump did, Trump caused many Indians to book last minute flights to the US from India. Why? Because he announced that from 21st September, anyone who is entering the US has to pay $1,000 annual fee. Now, this annual aspect and various other aspects are still not yet clear, and these details are also not that important for the exam. But the main thing what you have to keep in mind, that this amount is $100,000 right now, which is very, very huge. That means if you are an individual, you have to pay, or your company has to pay. And if you look at the data here, you have companies such as Amazon, TCS, Microsoft, Meta, Apple, all the big companies, right? Correct? So you have to keep in mind that every year right now around 6.5 lakh visas are available, right? According to latest data. Now, with this kind of regulation, right, the Indian IT giants dominate the approval list. So what will happen to all these companies? Will they pay $100,000 for each of their employees? No, guys, they will not. Because we have to keep in mind that most of them are actually Indians. Correct? 70% of all people are actually from India. If we compare, China is distant at only 12 to 13%. Salary, when Indians are actually getting salary less than $100,000, how can they pay for the same? Correct? And mainly, if you look at the Indian average salary, which is actually lower than the US median IT salary also. Indians working in the US actually earn lesser than the US people working in the US. Right? So that actually the US people are getting cheap labor. But they are actually bringing in this hiring American policy. So definitely, it will be increasing the cost of doing business in the US. It will be also increasing the salaries in the US. And the main roots of this kind of backlash of this visa has been particularly the voting scenario. Recently concluded elections have reflected that Indian voters, or say, for example, say immigrant voters, are amounting for around 15% of the total votes, and most of them within this are actually Indians. So that means that political dispensation are actually very critical of Indians right now. And also there are various experts and economists, they are telling that this is a scam used by companies to bring in cheaper labor from India, from China, from elsewhere, right? And these companies are bringing, why? To actually bring down their costs, because if you hire some American, you have to pay more higher salaries. And they are also telling that if you are bringing cheaper labor, then you are lessening the salaries in the entire of the US economy too. Now there is a counter argument also, where various experts and industrialists like Elon Musk also have told that if we bring in this kind of regulation, this will be straight away stopping the influx of the top tier STEM graduates and the people, right? US technological supremacy will be going down, correct? And when we talk about the impact on Indians, right, well, we have to understand that temporarily a lot of Indians will be affected, right? Because if you see, close to 60% Indians earn less than 100k a year. They cannot afford this, so they have to go back, right? They have to go back to their original villages and their cities in India. For the US big tech, the costs are going to increase. But for India, there can be one opportunity. To actually circumvent this Donald Trump's policies, there are various US companies who are setting up global capacity centers in India. These are nothing but extensions of Microsoft, Google and all of those companies in India, so that the talent, Indian talent, can still be retained at these centers, right? And this can be actually a very, very good opportunity for us as a country. So let us see what will be happening. And here we are also hearing right now the Prime Minister will be addressing the nation at 5 p.m. today. So maybe there can be some linkages between the same. Now let us move on to the next one. Guys, here we have the topic of sustainable aviation fuel, and according to a recent report, India should be boosting the same under our energy sector. Now let us understand firstly through the PYQ of 2024 based on sustainable aviation fuel. The question that was asked that which of the following materials can be used as a feedstock for producing sustainable aviation fuel. To answer this statement in the comments below, first know the very basics. Guys, the aviation sector consists of around 2 to 3% of the global carbon dioxide emissions, because we use aviation turbine fuel, which is actually heavily refined fossil fuel. And if you go onto any website to book some flight tickets right now, you will see how much of CO2 emissions you are emitting in that particular flight journey. So you know that it is heavily polluting, right? And the next generation of aviation fuel is sustainable aviation fuel, which is actually made from feedstocks, right? Such as raw materials from agricultural residues or various other crop residues, or any kind of products that can be used for the blending of the petrol, right, of the aviation fuel, correct? That is actually what we know by sustainable aviation fuel. Firstly, feedstock is collected from multiple sources such as cooking oil, agricultural waste. Then that feedstock is actually converted into SAF using obviously refinery techniques. And then this is blended with traditional jet fuel, right? This is actually known as the aviation turbine fuel. And this blended fuel is now delivered into the planes. And this can reduce the emissions by up to 80% against the normal ATF that we use right now. Please do remember, guys, sustainable aviation fuel is not biofuel from food crops that cause deforestation. For example, say, if I am setting up a new sugarcane farm to only produce biofuels, I have to cut down a forest. But sustainable aviation fuel will not be taking the produce from there. It will be taking from our homes, from municipalities, from agricultural farmlands, and then it will be trying to have a sustainable aviation fuel, right? So the PYQ's answer you please mention in the comments below. Let me see how well your common sense is working right now. Okay. Now this report which has come up is actually released by the Ministry of Civil Aviation, in collaboration with the International Civil Aviation Organization, which is the aviation watchdog internationally, and the European Union. So this report is actually giving us the various opportunities and the feedback that okay, India is actually capable of fully meeting its internal demand while also having some export available of sustainable aviation fuel. Because we have to understand that India has a capacity to produce more than 14 to 33 million ton per year. That means we can have enough for our own domestic, and also we can export the same. And the amount of blending that we have to do with the sustainable fuel with the aviation turbine fuel is given in this years. For example, by 2027 we have to blend to 1%, then 28 2%, then 35%. And this particular feedstocks can be gotten from vegetable oils such as from jatropha, used cooking oil even, and non-edible oils. Then we can also get the same via sugarcane baggage, right? Particularly via the various waste products from the sugarcane industry, from rice straw, from municipal solid waste, and obviously from power tool liquids also, with reference to green hydrogen and captured carbon dioxides, right? So that is why this report is calling for the setting up of an SAF council. So there must be representatives from the government and the industry. We will be given representation at this particular council to develop a strategy and vision for domestic manufacturing of SAF in the country. Next, the report is also suggesting us to find solutions to challenges such as high production cost. So this can be done via viability gap funding by giving more investment by the government initially to make the business sustainable. And at the end of the day, the government and this report has also recommended the alcohol to jet production process as the largest opportunity for India, because this alcohol to jet kind of an approach, the same that we are seeing in ethanol blending, can be replicated in India, and we can actually have very high amount of dividends, because you cannot ignore the fuel sector. The entire economy is running on the same. So this is all for the topic. Now let us move on to the next one. Guys, winters are coming soon, and with that the issue of stubble burning in North India has returned again. In Punjab, 27 incidents of stubble burning in 5 cases have been recently discovered right now itself. Imagine what would be the condition going forwards. So let us look into the basics of stubble burning firstly. Stubble burning is nothing but burning the lower part of the crop after grain harvest, because this kind of stubble which are left are expensive for the farmers to channelize away, right? Also, between harvesting and sowing, there is an extremely short amount of window during the months of October to November, because after Kharif crop, you have to grow the Ravi crop right now. So the window is very small, and there is a policy in the country of MSP, of rice and wheat. And also many farmers in North India get free electricity, due to which they produce more rice, and produce more rice they have more stubble, and due to more stubble they have to burn it all, correct, and combine it with Diwali and the cold season in Delhi. Cold air is already heavier and it traps a lot of pollutants. And talk about Delhi's geography also, it is almost shaped in a bowl shape, so cold air is settling here and not going away. This is causing the issues of air pollution, right? And this stubble burning is always in the news every year during this time. Firstly, we have to understand there is a short window due to which farmers try to burn it as soon as possible. High cost of alternatives such as happy seeder machines are quite costly. Combine harvesters also make this problem worse, right? And we have to understand these combined harvesters are not suited with the process to capture the stubble itself. Next, the labor productivity and availability is very less right now. The farming and everything is mechanized, and large amount of stubble is imposed, plus this timing is very, very crucial, where the timing is less, we do not have labor within that time, and at the end of the day the stubble do not sometimes have proper economic values too. So that is why if we look at the events from 2021, 22, 23, 24, while the instances have come down, but still the air quality, if you can look at the same in Delhi, right, as of last year it is around 218 in October itself. So this is making the air unbreathable in India, correct, due to this particular things. And this is present in Punjab, Haryana, Uttar Pradesh, Rajasthan, Madhya Pradesh, and all these cases are exacerbating this kind of events. Firstly, the impact based on environment is actually pollutant. We have so many amount of pollutants such as PM 2.5, PM 10, carbon monoxide, volatile organic carbon, and even black carbon, that is known as soot. Also, greenhouse gases are emitted in the process such as carbon dioxide, methane, and N2O. Various oxides of nitrogen are also released. Also, when you burn too much of stubble, that kills off the microbes and the bacteria, microorganism. Heat penetrates beneath the soil. It totally destroys the soil fertility. Obviously, health impact with reference to respiratory diseases such as asthma, bronchitis, COPD gets exacerbated. This kind of pollutants enter the bloodstream, causes multiples of cardiovascular diseases, eye irritation, skin allergies. Even vulnerable groups such as children, elderlies are not spared. And at the end of the day, economic impact is huge. The health costs rise on the people, right? Accidents happen, and obviously loss of biodiversity due to the burning is also a serious concern. And that is why the government of India has actually taken so many reforms. Firstly, we have the Commission for Air Quality Management for the NCR and the adjoining regions, which is looking strictly into the matter of stubble burning and recommending solutions. Next, we are also trying to criminalize various provisions by the state government with reference to stubble burning, imposition of fines, and also with reference to Supreme Court and NGT guidelines, where Supreme Court recently also had stated that we should be jailing farmers who indulge in stubble burning, and this can only send the right message. Correct. Apart from that, we are also having crop residue management scheme, which is giving subsidies for the farmers to procure those kind of stubble, and also doing so many awareness campaigns. Apart from this, we have biomass power plants where we are trying to take the stubble and trying to transition it into energy using even the Govardhan plants under the Satat scheme, which is trying to process the various wastes into energy. We are also trying to boost ethanol production, and stubble can help under the same by actually feeding into the second generational ethanol power plants, where the second generation ethanol power plants are not using food crops, they're using non-food crops such as stubble. We can also manage them on the ground itself by using happy seeders, which are special machines which can actually pick up the kind of stubble on the ground. We can also use various machines known as SMS, which can be fitted into combine harvesters, and this is a specialized machine which can pick up the stubble itself. And obviously we can use the Pusa biodecomposer, which is kind of a powder, when mixed with water and sprayed on the entire field, can actually dissolve the stubble in the ground directly, also increasing the amount of fertility. Apart from this, there are other suggestions and solutions such as using happy seeder machine on a large scale, and the government must be funding for the same. Using mulching machines, so that we trying to convert the stubble into mulches that can increase the soil fertility. We can do the same using paddy straw balers and collection. If you have seen some movies where you see large bales, golden brown bells lying on the ground, we can actually do the same and reduce the surface area of the entire field and using bales for this particular reason. We can also on the ground only cut down the stubble, and we can try to send it to various plants where it can try to generate into energy. We can use so many biodecomposers such as the Pusa biodecomposers, such as we can use and collect all the stubble and compose it under the ground and have biochar. We can also burn the stubble and create a charcoal out of it to generate more energy. We can also do briquetting, which is actually another term for biomass to energy transmission. And at the end of the day, we have to move beyond the policies of rice and wheat system, which is creating more of the issues. Correct? And that is why the Punjab farmers will be right now be trained and sensitized. Okay, and the government has sanctioned around 15,000 crop residue management machines so far. Right? Also, it has prepared a 500 crore action plan to procure the various paddy and promote sustainable agricultural practices. And at the end of the day, the Punjab Pollution Control Board is also looking into the various instances using satellites, and a fine of 1 lakh rupees in the shape of environmental compensation has been imposed on farmers even. So this is how this is being managed right now, and right now you have this PYQ to solve. Now moving on to the last article, guys. The legendary Malayalam actor Mohanlal is set to receive the Dadasaheb Phalke Award. And if you have been following the PYQs recently, guys, they have been asking you about the various basics of some awards. Firstly, we'll be looking at the major national film awards. Now, it was instituted in 1954, and earlier it was under the Directorate of Film Festivals. Right now, these film awards are under the National Film Developmental Bodies under the Ministry of Information and Broadcasting. And the ceremony will be presided by the President of India, who will be awarding the same. And guys, for your information, for your prelims examination, the award has been suspended in 1970. And in that year, in 1969, there were no best feature film category in the same. And again, it was suspended only in one category, it is under the best choreography in 2024 due to some sexual allegations. Next, it is actually having three kinds of awards: feature films, non-feature films, and best writing on cinema, where these feature films are having three kinds of awards again. First, the Swarn Kamal, which is known as Golden Lotus Award, where a trophy is given, a certificate is given, and a cash prize is also given. Next, Rajat Kamal Award, that is the Silver Lotus Award, where again a trophy, certificate, and cash prize is given. And finally, under the National Film Awards only, we have the Dadasaheb Phalke Award. You know that he has been one of the most instrumental directors in India who started his career in 1900s, right? And he also directed various short films, even India's one of the most earliest silent cinemas, right? And the award is given in his name to people who have done outstanding contribution to the growth and development of Indian cinema, and it is given as a lifetime achievement, right? And mainly, if you are getting this award, you will be getting the Golden Lotus status, certificates, trophy, cash prize, and also you will be getting a medallion, a shawl, and a cash prize which is ranging from 10 to 15 lakhs. It was instituted in 1969, where the first recipient was Devika Rani, and this award was also given posthumously to even various individuals who have passed away after their death. And as of now, there are no records of full suspension of the awards of the Dadasaheb Phalke Award. Right? Now, the main official process of selecting this is done by the Ministry of Information and Broadcasting, where there are some regional juries of 5 panels and a central jury who will be selecting the final award. And there are people from cinema, allied arts, scholarships, and humanities which are actually part of this particular jury and this process. So this brings us to this question in 2021. That is why, if you look at statement number 2, that is why I thought of discussing these kinds of news also and breaking down. If you know the answer, please do let me know in the comments below. And we have come to this end of the discussion. Thank you all for being a very patient audience. Please do attempt the quiz which is following up, and all the best and best of luck till we meet again very soon. Thank you.